Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our webinar today. Welcome and thanks for joining. We'll be starting in just one moment, so hold on as other people sign on. Thanks. Okay, I can see we've got folks attending, so we'll just give it just another moment and we'll get things going. And if you need any technical assistance, you can use the question box in the right of your screen if you're having any trouble. All right, well, let's get things started. Welcome to the Sustainable Solutions for Craft Beverage Producers webinar series hosted by EPA Region 1, hosted by the Pollution Prevention Program, EPA's Energy Star program, and the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Pollution Prevention Program. I'm Rob Gilman, the Pollution Prevention Coordinator here at EPA Region 1 out of Boston. And I support sustainability projects throughout New England, particularly those that help food and beverage manufacturers save money and work smarter, and by eliminating waste and by reducing the use of energy, water, and toxic materials. I'm joined by co-hosts Kathy Black and Cynthia Nelson of the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Pollution Prevention Program and Emily Bolger of EPA's Energy Star program. This three-part series is funded in part by EPA. So let's go to our next slide. Just want to begin with a few housekeeping issues. We've muted all attendees, but if you're having trouble hearing the presentations, you can try closing all of your applications and logging out of VPN. And if you're still having trouble, please select the phone call button under the audio tab and call the number listed in the registration confirm email that you received with your PIN number, and that will allow you to call into the webinar. And if you're experiencing other technical problems and want to ask a question, please use the question tab in the side dock where it says, quote, enter a question for staff. Please type your questions and specify a speaker during the presentations if that's applicable. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to all registered attendees and posted on the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Sustainable Craft Beverage Program webpage. Now, before we begin, let's partake in two quick polls. The first poll here, just ask how many people are attending. Is it just you, or do you have one or more people who are joining you on at your computer screen? Do you have 3 or 4 of the people who are joining you? We're just curious about this. So fill out your poll, and we're gonna see what the results are in just a moment. So you ready? 3, 2, 1. Let's see what those results are. Oh, great. So as I can see here, 97% of people are by themselves at their computer, which is completely understandable. So we have our next poll, which is looking more at what organizations people are representing. So in this poll, we're looking at if you belong to the brewery industry, this is sort of the craft brewery industry, which includes wineries and distilleries and other craft beverages of trade associations. Maybe you belong to a university or a government or nonprofit. So we'll just fill that out quickly, and we'll get a better sense of who is on this webinar call. All right, 3, 2, 1, fill it out, and let's look at the results. So this is interesting. We have a fair amount of people from government, about just over a quarter of the attendees are from the brewery industry. Fewer from the winery, distillery, and other craft beverages, just 2%. About a quarter from universities, as I mentioned, a little over 40% from government, and some from nonprofit as well too. So good, we've got a good mix of folks to hear what we're going to be talking about today. So we have 3 knowledgeable speakers will be joining us today to talk about EPA's energy treasure hunt for microbreweries. And yeah, let's just move to the next slide, please, Kathy. And our 3 speakers include Emily Bulger, who is the Regional Energy Star representative for EPA Region 1, located in Boston. And Emily also coordinates the New England Energy Management Best Practices Network, which is a regional network of industrial end users, utilities, and strategic energy managers brought together with the common goal of saving energy. Danny McCry will talk more about energy treasure hunts at breweries, and Danny is an industrial sector manager with the US EPA Energy Star program, a voluntary government program that works with manufacturing to increase energy efficiency across their operations. Danny leads initiatives with several manufacturing sectors to identify best energy management practices and create benchmarking tools to promote sustainability through improved energy performance. Danny is a certified manager, holds a master's in environmental management, and is a home brewer himself. Lovely. So appropriate for today. Our final speaker is Scott Shirley, who is the Director of Brewing for Lawsons Finest Liquid. Scott is a graduate of the American Brewers Guild Diploma course and of the University of California, Davis's General Certificate in Brewing and Packaging. His brewing experience includes production manager at Long Trail Brewing Company, brewer at Tuckerman Brewing Company, and the head brewer for Harpoon Brewery in Windsor, Vermont for 18 years. Next slide, please. So, hello, Emily, but before I begin, we want to start with a poll about your level of experience. Oh, I'm sorry, Emily, I'll let you take this on. Welcome, Emily, and thanks for being with us today.
Sure. Kathy, I'm not sure if we wanted to launch that poll now or later on, but either or works if we wanted to launch that poll now. So yeah, we just want to know, what is your level of experience with energy treasure hunts before we really get into what they are. So we'll give you a moment to answer that. And we can go ahead and close it out. Okay, so it looks like we are catching you at the right time then, because a large portion of you have never heard of an energy treasure hunt, and a large portion of you have you heard of it, but you've not participated in one. So hopefully, we can change that today. So if we can go back to the slides, we can get into the Energy Star treasure map for microbreweries. As Rob mentioned, my name's Emily Bulger, and I am Region 1 Energy Star coordinator. Just getting into a little bit of background information here. So what is Energy Star? So Energy Star is a joint program between the Department of Energy and the US Environmental Protection Agency, and it's broken down into 4 different sectors: products, commercial buildings, homes, and industrial plants. Next slide. So the program goal is to reduce any energy-related greenhouse gas emissions by promoting energy efficiency. Energy Star is the oldest EPA climate change mitigation program. It's voluntary, non-regulatory partnership program, and since 1992, Energy Star and its partners have helped save more than 4 trillion kilowatt hours of electricity and prevent over 3.5 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions. Next slide. So just wanted to give a little shout out here. So there were 14 New England Energy Star Award winners. Some of the Partner of the Year Sustained Excellence Award winners include Raytheon, Beacon Capital, New Hampshire Electric and Gas, Efficiency Vermont, among many others. And so down the road, we hope some of you might consider becoming an Energy Star partner and earning some of these awards yourself. So just wanted to give a little plug to that. You know, Energy Star has a ton of recognition programs. So next slide. So why care about energy? There are a lot of common misconceptions when it comes to energy management, such as only big companies can do it, or only plants with new equipment can be energy efficient. Everybody manages energy. We don't have enough staff. Large capital budgets are required to improve energy performance, or we are already doing everything we can. And so we're hoping to maybe clear up some of those misconceptions. And so Kathy, if you could launch the next poll here. And so how much money do you think all breweries in the US spent on electricity and fuel in 2017? 1 million, 15 million, 100 million, 250 million, or 325 million. So we'll give you a second to think about that. Okay, we can go ahead and close it out. So yes, the correct answer is 327 million. So pretty much 325 million in 2017, which is a huge number. And so going back to our slides here. Next slide. So why care about energy? So it improves financial performance. As we just stated, the brewing industry spent 327 million on energy related costs in 2017, which comes from the 2017 economic census. And treasure hunts have been reported to help identify upwards of 10% energy savings, which if you're considering that 327 million, is a huge amount of energy savings and potential there. And so it also reduces greenhouse gas and other air emissions. And so kilowatt hours plus therms equals carbon dioxide emissions plus money. And so if we can reduce the amount of kilowatt hours and therms, we can reduce the amount of carbon dioxide and save money. And the last thing is that it can improve relationships with communities and customers. A lot of people, especially, you know, millennials, they care a lot about sustainability and energy efficiency. So just another area to improve as well. Next slide. So what are treasure hunts? Treasure hunts are a dynamic and fun way to find no and low cost energy savings and opportunities in your plants and build a culture of energy efficiency. It's usually a 1 to 3 day event on production and non-production days, and it's conducted by internal staff supplemented with consultants, and it engages decision makers along the way. Next slide. So you might be wondering what the difference is between treasure hunts versus audits. So from an audit, you have a tone of what are the problems that you can find, and its participants are an external consultant, it's led by an auditor. The focus is typically operational, small, large capital projects, procurement. Its results are delivered post-audit in a report, and it's presented to an audit commissioner by an auditor. So a treasure hunt is a more engaging process with the actual staff at the brewery. So the tone is opportunities. Where are opportunities to save? The participants are plant staff. It's led by a facilitator. The focus is operational and behavioral, and the results are identified and discussed during the treasure hunt. So along the way in the process, these results are discussed, and it's presented to senior plant and management by staff. So it's really engaging upper management through the staff themselves. Next slide. So Energy Star has, over the past year, created the Find the Treasure Hunt campaign. And so the way that works is the first step would be to conduct an energy treasure hunt So organize treasure hunts and identify potential savings. The second step would be to add your energy to the treasure chest, so you can share all of your savings on an online form at energystar.gov/treasurehunt. So on that form, you would just need to include the date and site, the total estimated energy savings, and list top 3 energy savings measured. The third step would be to get EPA recognition for participating. So you can be featured on energystar.gov/treasurehunt, and you can receive a printable certificate noting your contributions. Next slide. So as of last week, there was a reported about 1 million British thermal units of potential energy savings found, 44.2 potential millions of dollars saved, and about 440,000 potential metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions avoided. So those are massive numbers of savings. And those are just those that have reported their savings at Energy Star. So, you know, you can only imagine how much savings could be through treasure hunts without actually being reported. So, you know, just another opportunity. And, you know, if you do decide to go through with conducting an energy treasure hunt, it's really a great opportunity to be recognized nationally. Next slide. So if you are planning a treasure hunt, there are a ton of resources. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but on energystar.gov/treasurehunt. And so some of those include treasure maps for specific plant and building types, project detail sheets, how-to guides for industrial plants and commercial buildings, and videos of success stories. Next slide. So as I mentioned on the last slide, some of those resources are treasure maps. So some of those include manufacturing plants, K-12 schools, retail stores, hospitals, labs, worship facilities, and so forth. The one that we're going to focus on today, of course, is the treasure map for microbreweries. So now I will pass it off to Danny McRae, who is the Energy Star from the Energy Star Industrial Program.
Thank you very much, Emily, and good afternoon, everyone. All right, so Emily just did a good job of explaining what Energy Star is and what treasure hunts are. So I have a question for people in the audience to think about. Try to think about who knows what Pirates and Energy Star have in common. So in case you're stumped, you can go to the next slide. You should know that both Pirates and Energy Star really like treasure hunts and searching for jewels, particularly megajewels, and if you're lucky, gigajewels. Sorry for the corny joke, but we've had a lot of companies on their treasure hunt find megajewels. Not many have found gigajewels, at least no one yet. All right, let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk about the Brewery Treasure Map that we developed to help find energy savings. So if you don't have a background in energy or have expert knowledge about some of the equipment in your brewery, one of the most tangible things to have with you is a map, something to give you an idea of what to look for. The Brewery Treasure Map, you can actually access it in the sidebar under handouts. So you could click that to follow along, and we'll try to put a link to it on our website in the chat. But the Brewery Map is a several-page PDF that you could download and print. It's available as the side of the screen, as I mentioned, and it has over 150 things that you can do in your brewery to help you save energy. They include low-cost items and also capital-intensive things that you can do, so there's really something there for everyone. Now, the map is broken up into different sections based on the energy systems in your plants. When you think about how energy is used in a brewery, a lot of it really comes down to heating things up, cooling things down, and moving stuff around the plant. That energy is actually being used in the brewing equipment. It's being used in your mash tuns, in your kettles, in your fermenters and bottling lines. But that thermal and kinetic energy is being generated by support equipment. So your hot water or steam for heating the mash or boiling the water, that's going to come from your boiler. Likewise, chilled water may come from your chiller, and the ability to move stuff around is going to come from your motor and pumps. So because a lot of the energy savings are in the support equipment, the treasure map has different sections that go through where you could find them there. So there's a section on chillers, refrigeration, hot water, and steam systems. And then we also know that some breweries will have a brew pub attached. So we have some tips for the brew pubs and kitchen there as well. Let's go to the next slide. So you can go through the guide, the map on your own. I'm not going to go into all these examples, but I want to give you a general idea of the kinds of things that you'll find in the treasure map. First, I mentioned that we do have recommendations that are divided into low-cost opportunities and then capital budget opportunities. So if we were going to look at brewing and production equipment, for example, some of the low-cost upgrades that you may be able to find and are included on the map would be checking to see if there's any insulation damage on your pipes or on your kettles or any other equipment. If you have conveyors, especially for bottling lines, a low-cost item could be including automatic stops to avoid idling time. At the same time, we also have recommendations if you want to go the capital investment route. So as I mentioned, a lot of stuff in the breweries is just heating things up and cooling things down. So there's a lot of opportunity for heat exchange between those processes. So you could, in theory, install a heat exchanger between your processed water for heating the mash water and then cooling down the wort after it's been boiled. So that's for brewing. And then if you're going to look at refrigeration, a low-cost opportunity would be in your refrigerators, you may have stuff that's stacked right near the vents. A lot of it seems common sense. Don't put stuff near there, but if you're not focusing on energy, stuff like that may be overlooked. So the point of the map is really to give you an idea of things that you can find. Let's go to the next slide. Now, I saw from the poll earlier, we have a good number of breweries, but we also have people from government agencies, university and nonprofit sector. So if you're not a brewery, but you are a state, a municipality, association, or an NGO, you could actually work with Energy Star to co-brand the treasure map with your logo to make it an even more attractive tool. The Energy Star brand and logo have been recognized by more than 90% of Americans for over a decade, but we also know that your brand and logo may have a lot of credibility with your members and community. So putting them together could create more credibility and visibility. And if you are interested in doing this, you just need to give us a short statement about why you want to partner with Energy Star, and you could send it to my colleague, Jerry Lawson. His email address is below, or you could follow up with me. Let's go to the next slide. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is how do you conduct a treasure hunt in the midst of a pandemic, especially because treasure hunts really focus on bringing people together, not just having someone from the outside and do an audit of your plant, but really engaging your staff to find these opportunities. So we put together a short guide on what our partners have been doing during COVID to conduct treasure hunts off-site. The link to that is below, and you can take a look at it after the call. Let's go to the next slide. So if you conduct a treasure hunt, as Emily said earlier, you can get recognition for doing that through the Find the Treasure campaign. After you conduct a treasure hunt, you would go to energystar.gov/treasure hunt, tell us the brewery name, the location, and a few sentences about what you found, and your brewery will get a certificate and go on a website. And if you are a state agency or a university and you're partnering with the brewery to do a treasure hunt, you could get recognition as well. Now, if you implement the savings of the treasure hunt, or if you have if you made energy savings in your plant, you can also get EPA recognition from the Challenge for Industry. Let's go to the next slide. To get recognition for the challenge, breweries just need to pick a metric that's meaningful for you, such as maybe energy per gallon or energy per barrel of beer, and register with Energy Star. You're then going to track your energy use against the baseline. And if you can reduce your intensity by 10% within a 5-year period, your brewery name can go on the Energy Star website. We will send the brewery a certificate. We'll even send a letter to the CEO or senior manager from EPA. It's not often that CEOs get letters from EPA congratulating them, so it's a really great way to show what your plants have been doing. And the challenge is really a good way. If you're just starting to track energy use, like you're just starting to track how much energy you're using, it's a good way to come up with baselines and goals. Let's go to the next slide. And breweries have worked with us before. Just a month ago, Bell's Brewery in Michigan, they achieved the challenge in a period of 2 years. So they were able to reduce their energy by 10% just in a 2-year period. And 2 of the 3 things that they did were non-capital intensive procedures, including checking for a compressed air leak and installing LED lights. So that just gives you an idea of how other breweries have leveraged treasure hunts in the challenge. You're going to hear about more from an actual brewery in a minute. So if we go to my last slide, just wanted to thank you for your time. And in closing, to sum this up, I would recommend download the Energy Treasure Map for breweries. And if you would like to host a treasure hunt, let Emily and the hosts of this webinar know. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to Rob and Kathy.
Great, thank you so much, Danny. With that, I guess we're just going to pass it along to our next speaker, who is Scott Shirley from Lawsons Finest Liquids. Take it away, Scott.
Hi, thanks. Great opportunity here to spread some hard-earned experiences with doing a energy treasure hunt. We, when I was with Harpoon back in 2016, if you want to advance the slide, we put together, Efficiency Vermont came to us and asked us if we'd be interested in hosting what they called at that point a energy Kaizen. And the idea behind the energy Kaizen was to bring in the staff, the middle management, outside people, outside of the industry, other brewers, into the brewery and spend 2 or 3 days running around the brewery, pointing out all the things that we walk by on a daily basis. And as much fun as that sounds, you're inviting somebody into your house to show you all the things that are wrong and broken in your house, which is, you have to have the right mindset. You have to be really open and understanding, and the people that came in, I think, did a wonderful job of working with our teams and presenting, all of things that we found, during that 2-day period in a great positive light, and really led us to set up a great roadmap for improvement. But to get there, you got to really do some basic groundwork. And it all really starts with your utility bills and understanding your electric bill, and looking at that electric bill and understanding where how many kilowatts you're using on over the course of a month, and comparing that to how much beer you're producing, and understanding peak versus off peak. On this bill in particular, you can see when our peak hours versus our off peak hours through our electric company. We know what those hours are, and so we kind of get a good idea of what our quiet plant looks like. And that's really important, because that kind of sets a tone as to what's systemic, what's constantly running, like chillers 24/7, versus turning on the centrifuge at 6 o'clock in the morning, and turning on the packaging line and getting the brew house going during peak hours, and seeing what the difference is between those two things. Another thing you really want to look at is on our particular bill here, you can see that as much as our peak billing hours are $2,600, our peak kilowatt in a 15-minute increment at 2:45 in the afternoon is 139. And that has just as much an effect of the total cost of the bill as how many actual kilowatt hours we use. So, you know, when you start looking at this, it's like, oh, well, what happened at that time? You know, are there things that we can shift to off-peak or slowly turn on so we're not getting that large spike? Versus our off-peak, we kind of have that baseline of, you know, what the quiet brewery is doing. So really understanding your electric bill, and this is really broad-based. You know, this is just for a full month. You should be able to work with your electric utility, and they should be able to supply you with 15-minute increments, if not finer, so you can kind of really see what's going on throughout a day. And looking at this different seasons and that 15-minute increments over different seasons will also really help you out in understanding where and how you're using electricity. To the next slide. And then history is really important. There is a lot going on this page, but understanding over time, because as you do this energy treasure hunt, you know, you're making small incremental changes, and tracking those changes sometimes can be hard to find in short periods of time. So you really need to kind of go back and get as much history as you can versus what you've brewed and things that you've changed, and noting when you've added equipment or taking equipment offline, and seeing that long term. I have this data going back to the brewery opening in the fall of 2018, and that really helps us understand what's going on long term. And we use the same data for all of our utilities, for our propane usage, and for our CO2, and for our water. Tracking this data is incredibly important as you start growing and thinking about the cost of what all these utilities are to your bottom line. So the next slide. And so, you know, this is kind of the big picture, to kind of give it a perspective of, you know, what our utility or fuel or water or wastewater and CO2 look like compared to our other expenses throughout the brewery. And although that, you know, electricity is only 10% of our labor cost, the overall energy cost and water cost is a significant number on our COGS, our cost of goods sold. And so everything we can do there, especially now with the amount of uncertainty in beer sales and how they've been fluctuating, getting a good control on this will really help you tremendously on your bottom line and spend that money better somewhere else. So off to the next slide. And, you know, once you have that data, it's okay, well, where am I at compared to other breweries? There's a lot of good information out there on the Brewers Association meeting. They do surveys every year and post that on the Brewers Association on the sustainability tab on their webpage. And you can go and look for your brewery size and see where you're at. And, you know, for the brewery here in Waitsfield, you know, we're in that 1,000 to 10,000 barrels per year. And, you know, the average out of 24 reporting breweries is, you know, 58 kilowatts per barrel packaged. And actually, if you go back one, no, never mind. I believe we're currently at about 30. So we're in a pretty good spot. I think it's one more back. You can look at it. There we go. So where are we at? Yeah, so we're probably averaging that around that 50 range. And it's really influenced tremendously by our barrels brewed per month. And what that really kind of leads me to understand about our system here is we have a commitment to keep our beer cold from packaging all the way through our distributor system. And so we have pretty large reefer units for beer storage, and those eat up a lot of energy. They're running 24/7. So that really adds to our overall cost. So next slide. So, when we did this at Harpoon, like I said, back in 2016, we came in on a Sunday and walked around the facilitator and got some data and some readings on our energy, our electric input, and just see where we were at baseline. And then on Monday morning, we fired up. You can see we had a pretty large crew there. We had people from brewing, from maintenance, from office staff, production, and then we had people from other breweries. We had Avery from Hermit Thrush, and we had another guy from a cidery, and quite a few people from Efficiency Vermont. So we had a really good cross section of people that knew equipment and brewing equipment in particular, but also people with the hat on of not knowing a whole lot and asking a lot of great questions and questioning why brewers do things the way they do them. And that is, I think, really important. It's easy to walk by something that you set up several years ago and never question it again until somebody walks by and goes, "What's that doing?" Because we found quite a few things that we were able to eliminate or change that made improvements that I would not have ever even thought of questioning. And so we found about 40 different measures that we identified through that process, all the way from kitchen equipment and lighting in the kitchen to office equipment and how that was being handled to brewery equipment. So it was a great opportunity to question everything that we did. So on to the next slide. And so that was something we had to kind of work through ourselves. And now with EPA and Energy Star, there is a great roadmap to do this system. And you can go right on to the next one. That's just a link to their page. They laid out over the course of, I want to say it's 24 pages, I believe. It's a pretty extensive document. It's pretty intimidating, but I think it's really well laid out and will set you up for success by going through and asking these questions. And this isn't something that one person can do by themselves. You definitely need to chop this up into small bits and bring in your production staff, your office staff, and your middle managers to really they're the ones who deal with this stuff on a regular basis, and they know it pretty well. And if they see something that looks out of the ordinary, they're really quick to ask and point out. But just going through, some of the things that and you're not going to have all the equipment to check all these things. So I would definitely really suggest working with your state agencies. Here in Vermont, we have a great Efficiency Vermont is a program that these guys have air leak detectors, thermal cameras, electrical monitors that they can hook up for long periods of time to really get you the information to ensure that you can answer these questions, and then really kind of prioritizing them. So I believe you go on to the next slide. So this is, these were things that we quickly found. These were those, embarrassing things that you walk around your brewery and you don't have time or the money to fix that at the moment. But when you kind of put it all together and get it in front of your upper management, it really helped kind of spark the conversations about them. And the great thing about working with Efficiency Vermont and the facilitator is those guys could really put numbers quick back of the napkin, back of the envelope, back to the beer koozie, numbers together to kind of point out like the cost of a lot of these things that you tend to overlook over long periods of time. You know, the picture there of the hot glue system was up at Magic Hat when we did one of these up there. And what had happened was once or twice, you know, the guys forgot to turn on the glue pots. So they decided just to leave these glue pots on 24/7. So they never had to wait for them to warm up. And it's like, that is a tremendous amount of energy just burning, sitting when you're only running that packaging line a few times a week, or maybe even, you know, not all that often, for saving 15 minutes. And, you know, so working with their staff, like how can we change that behavior? You know, and it was simply, well, let's set up a checklist and get the guys to start up and shut down all these different pieces of equipment and turning on the glue pot and verifying that they turn on the glue pot, you know, and that was a tremendous amount of savings. The HVAC unit that probably came from the 1980s that we had out behind, that was trying to cool our tap room in the Harpoon Brewery, that is a dinosaur. So we replaced that with 2 smaller units, that rooftop units, that probably saved us, I think the ROI on that was about 2 years. And also, you know, if you're working with a group like Efficiency Vermont, they have a lot of incentives to help us replace some of this equipment. So although it seems like a big cost, up front, they're there to help, and they have money to help with those units. And then things like that chiller unit, this is again at Magic Hat's warehouse. This is a low cost change right here. That thing was froze up solid as a block, so no air is moving through it. And they're trying to cool a big warehouse space refrigeration unit, and it's not working. It's not doing anything. It's just glycol going in and coming out, and nothing's happening. So just going in and changing timers and putting in longer defrost cycles in that unit cleared that rate up and made that hugely more efficient. But you know, the guys in the warehouse, they don't think about that stuff. They're not looking at it, but one of us look up at it and go, nah, that's not right. Back to the Harpoon Brewery, the thermal picture there, that was in our dry warehouse. That's a Modine heater, and that is midsummer. And that just has hot water running through our boiler constantly, 24/7, just dumping heat. The fan's not on, it's not blowing the heat down, it's not calling for heat. So we end up putting a bypass unit in there. So when it's not calling, it redirects the hot water back into the loop and doesn't just dump out heat onto the floor. A classic thing for brewers is that nasty looking valve stem. That's a throttle control for a glycol system. You can see it's throttled back about halfway. Efficiency Vermont has a great program for replacing throttled back pumps with valves and putting VFDs in. And instead of running it full amps all the time and cutting it back with valve control, you put on a VFD and you just ramp that pump down to the RPMs that you need. And they have some great software to calculate the savings on that. And the investment in the VFDs, they had incentives for like $100 per horsepower for a VFD. They ended up costing us very little. So just a lot of great low-hanging fruit, but also, you know, sometimes there's some cost involved. But the ROI we looked for was around 3 years, and we listed, had a list of about 40 items that we were able to, over the course of about a year and a half, to really get through those 40 items. But the end result was, you know, in 2015, our energy costs were about $7 per barrel. In 2016, after we had made the changes about mid-year, we were down to about $6.50, and full year 2017, we were down to $6.13 per of energy per barrel. And considering we were making about 55,000 barrels, that was about a $44,000 savings in our investment in that. Outside of the time of the Kaizen itself, we spent about $20,000, $22,000 on improvements. And so the ROI was definitely there. So the next slide. So here's kind of how we prioritize stuff. We really, I know that's kind of a lot to try and take in on this webinar, but you know, as we were prioritizing things, we really looked at high energy recovery and low cost first, and really short ROI. We had a lot of things we were like, by the end of the thing, we're like, oh, maybe we can turn down the compressor by 10 PSI and save quite a bit of money there, or turn our boiler pressure down. Do we really need the boiler running at 100 PSI when it's being throttled down to, you know, 25 PSI at the brew house? So just things we are actually able to accomplish, you know, within that time frame, but then kind of laying out a roadmap, because you're not going to get it all done in a very short period of time. A lot of these things took a lot of time, took a lot of work for the maintenance crew. We did a lot of that work internally. That helped save a tremendous amount of money rather than bringing in vendors and outside help to get that done. But laying out that roadmap is incredibly important, and then sharing those successes with your staff, engaging your staff, because a lot of things, just like the turning off the glue pods, they got to buy in. If they're not going to buy in, they're just going to go back to their habits. Next slide. And I kind of used up my time here, and you know, like I said, this is not a sprint. This isn't a 2-day event. It's definitely a marathon. There are things still on that list I'm sure the guys are still pecking away at. So I just want to say thanks, and if you have any questions, please let me know or reach out to me, and I'd be happy to help you out. Thanks.
Hey, Scott, thank you so much. That was so informative. A lot of good suggestions. Love the photos. That was just really great. We're gonna go to our Q&A session, but before that, we do want to ask a question, another poll, since the concept of the Energy Star treasure hunt is fresh in your mind. We want to ask people about their interest in the program. And so, as you can see here, yes, I'm interested in hosting and participating. I'm interested in participating, but not necessarily being a host. I'm not interested, or I'm really unsure about this time. And what we're going to do is answer these questions, and then we'll do some more Q&A. And then if two things, you're going to have a chance to re-answer these questions again, the follow-up poll. And particularly if you are interested, make sure that in the follow-up poll that you just put down some contact information so we can follow up. So let's see what the poll says. I have high hopes. Let's see what happens. Here we go. Okay, so as one would expect, we've got a bunch of people who want to actually host. That is fantastic. 13%, a third of the people here are interested in participating. A few people aren't interested, and some people about half people are unsure. So let's get some of these Q&A sessions going, and maybe we can help to answer any remaining questions that people have. I just want to let people know that we have our team. Our Q&A team is going to consist of Kathy Black from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, the Pollution Prevention Program, and also George Burgos, who is our webinar expert here at EPA Region 1, who will be fielding questions. So with that, I'll let you guys take it.
Yes, there's some great questions that came in. This question here is for Emily or Danny. Could you explain the difference between hosting an energy treasure hunt and participating, and how many have you conducted?
Sure. So I could take the first stab at this. So both are great. Hosting a treasure hunt would be if you work in a brewery and you wanted to do a treasure hunt in your brewery, find energy savings there. That's hosting a treasure hunt. Participating in one would be maybe your brewery is not ready to do a treasure hunt at this time, but if a brewery that is hosting one is opening up to peers, that would be if you're interested in attending that. Anything to add, Emily?
No, nothing really to add. I will just mention, so for the second part, so being in region 1, which is New England, we only have 2 people or 2 different organizations that have registered via EnergyStar.gov. So if you do decide that you want to go forward with hosting, please, get the EPA and national recognition that you deserve. So it's really simple process. So I'll just give another plug to that. But that would be the only thing I have to add.
And Scott, this came in during your presentation. It's an open question for all 3 of you. I'd like to hear more. How about you get employee buy-in?
Yeah, I think that's tough. Having them involved in this and having them working with these different agencies, we had packaging line guys with Efficiency Vermont people and outside brewers. They really felt engaged. They felt empowered, and they, had seen things, that they had questioned that sometimes we set up and do and kind of forget about, and then they're like, oh, why are we doing this way? And they got an opportunity to voice that into that group and really be heard. And then having that put to a dollar value really helped them see the value of it. I think that's really important.
And Scott, you're very popular today. Was the energy treasure hunt useful in getting employees to engage in keeping an eye out for energy saving opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it was an ongoing, like I said, it wasn't a one and done. The maintenance crew had that list, and that we talked about that list about every quarter, at company meetings, and things that we had accomplished, and then the savings that we had seen from those projects, and sharing that information with your group, and then tying that to what you were able to accomplish with that savings. Like, okay, hey, like I said, we saved $44,000 in a year. Were we able to, launch a new brand, do an extension on the tap room, or add a salesperson, tying it to something? I think making it tangible was really important, rather than, the owner put that money in his pocket.
Yeah. Okay, and this question, I think it came during your presentation as well. And does New Hampshire have comparable programs, for example, that helps with replacement parts, etc.?
That I don't know specifically about New Hampshire. I believe they have an energy efficiency program similar to Efficiency Vermont. Does
Yes.
anybody else?
This is Kathy, and I work with the pollution prevention program here in New Hampshire, and we work with New Hampshire Saves, and we have energy providers that will do audits and things like that, and they also have, they will give incentives on replacement parts and things like that. So if you are interested from New Hampshire, you can email us at nhppp@des.nh.org, and I will add that into the chat.
Awesome. All right, Scott, another question for you. Can you tell us the difference between an energy treasure hunt and an energy audit?
Well, I think Emily answered that question pretty early on. I'm not
okay, does she
want to go with it, Emily? I guess if I was going to give my 2 cents on it, I would say the treasure hunt is the physical, process of going down and taking pictures of stuff and asking those questions. For me, the audit side is looking at the data and making sure that we're not seeing anything we don't expect.
Okay.
And
We have a couple of minutes.
To that for energy treasure hunts. Emily explained earlier, a lot of sometimes when an audit is conducted, especially if it's from an outside party and it's management coming down, it can have sometimes a negative connotation. Someone's coming in and they're going to assess my performance, or if I'm missing or if I'm losing money because we're not being energy efficient. The purpose of a treasure hunt isn't to make that process seem that way. The treasure hunt is really focused on not necessarily engaging outside experts, but really using your human capital, your staff, to identify savings opportunities during the process. A lot of the things that are identified during a treasure hunt are low cost, no cost opportunities and behavioral things. So in the examples that Scott showed, a lot of those things like turning off the glue pot, and then doing different things. A lot of that just had to do with the way that people are operating on a day-to-day basis. And it's really the staff in the facility who kind of know what those processes are. And in order for it to be sustainable, people need to take ownership of that. So the treasure hunt is really trying to get people excited about finding energy saving opportunities rather than problems, and then really taking ownership of that. Sometimes you may do an audit, and if it's a third party, people may not be that invested in it, but if it's the staff who know that they have the power to change things, they're going to help with that. And on our website, energystar.gov/treasure hunt, you could find a lot of resources for how to conduct a treasure hunt and tools and calculators for that.
I see we have a couple of minutes. There is actually a question that came in right now, but I think it's a little too technical. Kathy, I think you should be able to just email this person for a response. But other than that, there's no more questions. And I'll leave it to Rob for closing remarks.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine to have a few minutes, and we don't we're really finishing up the hour here. So, Paul, I just want to say, in closing, thank you so much to our three presenters, Emily Bolger, Dan McCry, both from EPA's Energy Star program, and Scott Shirley. What a wealth of knowledge from Lawsons Finest Liquid. You definitely showed us that there's so many different ways to save energy at of all places, brewery operations, which is thank you for doing that. And if you like this webinar, be sure to check us out on the two upcoming webinars that you can see that list here. One on May 25th, that's looking at CO2 capture technology. Then also on June 22nd, where we're going to look at how to promote a culture of sustainability at your facility. And I think Scott was sort of mentioning about that a little bit earlier, like how do you engage your staff? So that's going to be very interesting. So with that, I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar, and to please complete the post-webinar survey. And with that, have a great day. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.